Lord Cornwallis had laid siege to Charleston, conquered it after 5 or 6 months. That was really the capital of the continent in terms of richness and value of that city. And when he captured the city in his siege, he captured, without much of a fight, 5,000 Continental Army soldiers. Every one of them retired from service, and that was almost all of George Washington's army in the South. Cornwallis then had an almost unopposed track north to get George caught between two British armies. He sent Major Patrick Ferguson out on the frontier. He said, raise an army of the British sympathizers out there. See, the British thought nearly everybody were sympathizers, and it was only a few troublemakers. Actually, the troublemakers were about equal to the British sympathizers, but there was a third group that wanted to be on the winning side, and they just changed sides in the middle of a battle when it was apparent who was going to win. They were the most despised by winner and loser in the Revolutionary War battles. Well, okay, Ferguson came out to the frontier, and he was doing a great job pacifying it. There wasn't enough force out here on the frontier to seriously challenge Cornwallis and his 4,000 regular British soldiers. But he was doing his duty, and anybody he found that did not favor the British, he would pay him a visit. He would ask them which side they were on. And then if they lied to him, he would take action. If they didn't lie to him, he let them go. The action that they took was to, first of all, get their livelihood away from them, like the cows and the horses and the agricultural part of their existence. If that didn't do it, he'd come back and he would burn their home. And if that didn't do it, he'd hang you and move on to some other place. Frontier was raw and bleeding from what Ferguson was doing. Well, he overachieved, in my opinion. He sent a messenger over the mountain to the folks that were living on Indian land, albeit illegally as far as he was concerned and as far as the English king was concerned. But they had no inkling to come out and fight Ferguson. They were focused not on the Revolutionary War, they were focused on their own survival against the Indians and carving out a life. But Ferguson sent a messenger over the mountains and said, you men must cease your opposition to British arms, come and live where you're supposed to on the east side of the Continental Divide, or I'm going to come across the mountain with my 1,200 men, and I'm going to hang your leaders and burn your land. If he had not made that threat, I don't think there would have been a battle at Kings Mountain. They are the ones that formed the force, joined by others, that went to Kings Mountain and won the battle. After Ferguson had delivered by messenger his message to the Over Mountain men, it was seriously considered as an existential problem. They were either going to have to fight or leave or die. So they decided in 3 weeks, they raised an army, about 1,000 people. It was joined by others as they began to march down toward Ferguson, wherever they could find him. But they were so serious about this death threat that Ferguson had given them that they did some heroic things in this time period. To get 1,000 people together in 3 weeks is really special on the frontier. And those same 3 weeks saw them make enough gunpowder for the battle. Gunpowder was always a hard quantity to come by on the frontier because the English were doing everything they could to deprive you of gunpowder making or gunpowder. But a new person had come to the scene down here on this side of the Continental Divide, and made 500 pounds of gunpowder in 3 weeks at risk of life and limb, and was every bit as much hero as the people who shot the guns. Her name is Mary Patton. I always tell the Mary Patton story to the kids, because you don't have to be shooting guns to do things for your country. You can use your skills, and she did, and is a heroine of the Battle of Kings Mountain. Well, okay, the men left after this 3 weeks of preparation, started off down the mountain looking for Ferguson. On the second day of the march, they were stymied because they tried to bring cattle and all sorts of things along to use if the battle was extended, for something to eat. So they decided to pack only a week's worth of food in their saddlebags. They would either be back home victorious by then or dead. Well, they started over the mountain, and 2 of their number, Crawford and Chambers, went ahead of the army to tell Ferguson the army was coming. Those would be traitors. So Ferguson knew the battle was coming. That made us very, very cautious as we came off the mountain. There were 2 ways to do it. We could have gone either way. We were afraid if we went one way, Ferguson might be waiting on the other one to go and do to our homes and families what he said he would do. So we went off the mountain both ways. No Ferguson. Ferguson, instead of coming out to meet us like we expected after he'd been warned that we were coming, he retreated. We couldn't find where he was for a week of bad weather, and then 5 or 6 days of more mystery about where Ferguson is. We had run out of food. We were foraging off the land. The 2 nights before the battle was carried out, we were camped in a pumpkin field, and we ate green pumpkin, which causes extreme digestive stress. There is a name for that. It begins with D, but I'm not allowed to say that in public. So, Ferguson knew they were coming. He sent 2 messengers to tell Cornwallis they were coming. The 2 messengers were to get to Cornwallis, who by that time was in Charlotte. And the 2 messengers were cowardly, I guess. Either that or super cautious. They only traveled at night. They only went 3 hours at night. They could have gotten there in 2 days if they just ridden their horses to tell Cornwallis that Ferguson needed help. But they got there on the day of the battle, and it was too late for Ferguson to get help from Cornwallis. That's another way they blew the battle at Kings Mountain. And the last way I really want to talk about is Ferguson was on the top of a ridge at the end of the Kings Mountain range. It was 40 or 50 feet high, and it was flat and narrow, and both sides were about 45 or 50 feet below. But both sides were where our army was going. Ferguson had made no effort to defend the top of that mountain, to build wooden shelters or forts or wooden wooden walls to hide behind. Neither did they dig any holes, foxholes, to hide in. They were exposed at the top of the mountain to the sharpshooting riflemen that had collected to fight them. And that is the last way Ferguson lost the battle and his life.